No one noticed her at first. She wore the same faded jacket every morning, sleeves rolled too far up, hands always busy. In a refugee clinic near the border, dozens of volunteers came and went, but she stayed. Quiet, observant, uncomplaining. Her name was Elena Moore, and on paper she was nothing more than a civilian volunteer. No rank, no weapon, no official duty beyond bandages and clean water. The war had eaten the country slowly. Villages burned without headlines. Roads vanished under shell craters. And still, Elena showed up every dawn, stepping over broken glass and empty casings like they were part of the landscape. She had arrived 6 months earlier with a humanitarian convoy. When the rest rotated out, she stayed behind. Why? One medic asked her once. She didn't answer. She rarely did. Elena worked where others hesitated. She cleaned wounds that smelled of rot. She held hands when painkillers ran out. She learned which screams meant fear and which meant death approaching. At night, when artillery thundered like an angry god, she sat outside the tents and wrote letters for the injured soldiers who couldn't move their hands. Letters to mothers. Letters to wives. Letters to children who still believed their fathers were invincible. She never signed her name, but she remembered every word. What no one knew, not even the officers who passed through the clinic, was that Elena had grown up in a military family. Her father died overseas when she was 10. Her mother never recovered. Elena learned early that war didn't need permission to take everything. She didn't hate the war. She hated what had erased point one evening. A patrol staggered into the clinic under fire. The lead soldier collapsed before the entrance, blood soaking through his uniform. The medic froze. The nurse screamed for morphine that didn't exist. Elena moved. She knelt in the dirt, pressed her hands into the wound, and spoke calmly, counting breaths, controlling bleeding, issuing commands like someone who had done this before. The soldier lived. That an officer watched her that night. 2 days later, another patrol arrived, this time ambushed, radios destroyed. Elena coordinated triage without waiting for orders. She mapped injuries, prioritized evacuation, and saved 3 men who should have died. The officer asked her again, "Who trained you?" She looked up, eyes tired but steady. "My father." The officer nodded slowly. From that moment, Elena was no longer invisible. Words spread quietly. Not officially, just murmured between units passing through the area. The volunteer knows combat medicine. The volunteer doesn't panic. The volunteer stays when shells fall. Then came the night the clinic was hit. Mortars fell without warning. The first explosion tore through the supply tent. The second collapsed the entrance. Screams filled the air. Fire spread. Chaos ruled. Elena dragged the wounded out one by one until shrapnel cut her leg open. She wrapped it with her own scarf and kept moving. When the enemy breached the perimeter, there were no soldiers left standing. Only volunteers and injured men. Elena picked up a rifle from the ground. She had never fired one in combat. She didn't hesitate. She positioned herself at the narrow pass, buying time. Every second mattered. Every breath burned. She fired until the rifle clicked empty, then dragged another wounded man behind cover. Reinforcements arrived an hour later. The clinic was gone. Elena survived. 3 weeks later, far from the front, a mother opened a letter written in careful handwriting. It described how her son had died bravely. At the bottom was a name she didn't recognize. Elena Moore. In another city. Another family read the same name. Then another, and another. The war letters traveled where Elena never could, and people began to ask, "Who is she?" Part 2. The name appeared first in whispers, then in conversations, then in official reports that tried and failed to explain why a civilian volunteer kept being mentioned in after-action summaries. Elena Moore assisted with evacuation. Elena Moore stabilized critical casualties. Elena Moore remained under fire. The military didn't know what to do with her. She wasn't enlisted. She refused formal rank. She rejected offers to leave. When asked why she stayed, she answered simply, "Someone has to remember." As the war dragged on, Elena moved with the front lines. Clinics, shelters, ruins. Wherever people broke, she appeared. Soldiers began asking for her by name. Not for treatment, But for letters, if I don't make it, they said, will you write for me? She always said yes. She memorized their faces, their voices, their last jokes. One winter morning, a young lieutenant handed her a sealed envelope. Don't open it unless I die, he said, trying to smile. He died that afternoon. Elena opened the letter by firelight, tears freezing on her lashes, and rewrote it in her own words so the mother wouldn't carry guilt forever. Weeks later, the enemy launched a final offensive near the border town. Evacuation orders were issued. Civilians first. Elena refused. I'm staying, she said. For what? An officer demanded. She looked at the wounded men who couldn't move. For them. The town fell. For 3 days, no contact came out. Command assumed everyone left behind was dead. Then a convoy broke through. They found Elena alive, exhausted, wounded, still working. 12 men survived because she never left. When the war finally ended, the headlines named generals and victories. But in quiet homes, families read letters written in familiar handwriting. And they remembered her. Years later, a memorial wall was built. Thousands of names carved in stone. Soldiers, medics, civilians. Among them was one name that didn't belong to a rank. Elena Moore. Volunteer people stopped there the longest because she was just a volunteer until her name appeared in the war letters. The gym didn't return to normal after she left. He couldn't. Ryan Cole stayed on a mat long after the door closed behind her. The echoes of her calm voice, this was me being polite, kept ringing louder than the crowd ever had. People whispered. She said Navy. Did she mean no way? You saw how she moved. That wasn't normal training. Ryan pushed himself up slowly. His ribs screamed. His arm felt like it had been yanked out of its socket. But worse than the pain was the weight pressing on his chest. Humiliation. For the first time in years, no one rushed to pat his back. No cheers. No respect. Just silence. One his friends try to laugh it off. Man, she must have been some kind of instructor or something. Ryan snapped his head up. Shut up. The trainer approached cautiously. Ryan, you okay? Ryan didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the door where she disappeared. Outside, Ava Hayes walked toward the parking lot as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Her breathing was steady. Her pulse calm. She'd been trained to fight in far worse places than a gym. She unlocked her truck and climbed in, but before starting the engine, she paused. For a brief second, her reflection stared back at her in the rearview mirror. Not a warrior. Not a SEAL. Just a woman tired of watching bullies hide behind strength. She drove off. The next morning, the gym buzzed like a shaken hive. The video had spread. Someone had uploaded the fight online. Grainy, shaky, but clear enough. Clear enough to show Ryan's flawless techniques collapsing under her effortless control. Clear enough to show fear in his eyes. .by noon. The clip had thousands of views. .by evening. It had a name. Black belt gets dropped by mystery woman. Comments flooded in. That's military. In civilian fights like that. She wasn't trying to hurt him. She was restraining him. Ryan didn't show up that day. Or the next. When he finally returned a week later, the gym felt different. Conversations stopped when he walked in. No one challenged him. No one praised him. Miguel was there too, still mopping, still quiet. Ryan watched him from across the room for a long time. Then, slowly, awkwardly, he walked over. Miguel stiffened. Ryan cleared his throat. Hey, Miguel nadie kościośli. Sir. Ryan winced at the word. Look about that day, Ryan said, eyes dropping. I was out of line. Miguel said nothing. Ryan swallowed. I'm sorry. The apology was real this time. Miguel studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. Thank you. Ryan walked away lighter than he'd arrived. But the weight wasn't gone. He needed to know. 3 weeks later, Ryan stood outside a naval training facility near the coast, hands stuffed into his jacket pockets. He'd used every contact he had, followed every rumor. And finally, a name. Lieutenant Commander Ava Hayes, that he watched as trainees ran drills with punishing intensity. Orders barked. Boots thundered. Then he saw her. She moved among them like gravity itself. Quiet, commanding, precise. When she corrected someone, they listened. When she spoke, they moved. Ryan felt something unfamiliar. Respect. When the session ended, she dismissed the trainees and turned, and saw him. Her expression didn't change. Can I help you? She asked. Ryan straightened instinctively. Mom, She raised an eyebrow, slightly. He exhaled. I wanted to apologize. Properly. She studied him, reading him the way she'd read his movements that day. Why? She asked. Because, he said honestly, I thought strength meant domination. You showed me it doesn't. Silence stretched, then she nodded once. Good. He hesitated. Why didn't you tell anyone who you were? She looked past him, toward the ocean. Because defending someone doesn't require a title. Ryan swallowed. Thank you for not breaking me. She met his eyes again. I didn't fight you to break you. I fought you to stop you. He nodded slowly. He turned to leave. She added, use your skills better than you did before. He did. Months passed. The gym changed. So did Ryan. He started teaching discipline instead of ego. Respect instead of fear. And whenever someone mocked the janitor, Ryan shut it down immediately. Miguel noticed. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Ava returned to the gym quietly. This time, no one laughed, and no one challenged. Ryan saw her first and stepped aside without a word. Miguel smiled when he saw her. You came back, he said. She smiled. Just checking in. The gym wasn't silent anymore. It was respectful. And that was the loudest victory of all.